All right, welcome to day 3. Glad that you're still hanging with us.
Today is going to be a great day. A lot of, I think, really helpful information, talking some about the neurosciences, which I mentioned a little bit yesterday, but today is where we really kind of go into depth on it. But we'll get into that in a minute. First, we want to do a recap of our day 2 of yesterday. So yesterday was going back to go forwards with Back to the Future. And we had our exercise of remembering things from the beginning, and we had our homework assignment related to that we'll touch on. Also, mindsets, and kind of led us through the information there.
The fixed mindset
Right.
versus the growth mindset. And it's very easy to slide into a fixed mindset, either entirely or just in one area. And so hopefully you were able to start having some aha moments and being able to change that. I found myself today saying yet. So that was good.
Yeah, and filters, sort of another variant, a different level of things. But how sometimes as guys we can have on the blue glasses and the ladies can have on the pink glasses, just because we view things differently. And then you have cultures and everything else, experiences in the past, triggers that just make filters something that have to be discovered and pulled off one at a time. And then we reap what we sow.
Yes. So if we're sowing impatience and frustration, we're going to be reaping from the other person impatience and frustration, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. And then the hard truths of change starts with me. There's a lot of things we want to outsource, and we wish that was one we could really outsource. But so much in life on change and relationships, it really does start with us.
And I don't want it to sound that with change starts with me doesn't mean I'm the only side of this equation. That's correct. The problem. Okay, maybe I'm only 10% of the problem. However, I can't change the other person. And a cycle that just continues, it takes somebody to stop the cycle. So I don't want that to be condemning or to feel like it's all my fault. No, just change starts with me.
And as we also mentioned the last, I think maybe both days, but just, once again, to bring it up, sometimes in our marriage relationships, there are some really heavy things that have been involved. It could be betrayal, it could be abuse, it could be addictions. So there can be things that, really make these much more challenging, that you really do need more help than what we're talking about here. And sometimes even what we're talking about, you may need to adapt to whatever your situation is. You can say, well, gosh, we aren't quite ready to do that exercise yet, but we understand what you're getting at, and here's what we can do instead, and it's all good.
Baby steps.
Yeah, that's right. Just it's moving in the right direction is what counts. And homework. Just thumbs up if the praying together still is kind of going well. Hey, that's awesome. Keep it up, because that is just it's knitting your hearts together. It's bringing God consciously into the picture. Wedding video.
Yeah, did anybody get to watch a wedding video or look at wedding photos? I saw some of them posted on the Facebook page. That was fun.
Okay.
No, not yet. Well, I know that was a hard one to fit in when we did this challenge before. We did this Saturday morning, and so people had, Saturday evening, but we still thought it'd be fun if you can,
we encourage you to
10
do
minutes of it.
Yeah, we encourage you to do it sometime.
Yeah, so, even if it's part of your date this weekend or something.
Yeah, it's part of that remembering. It brings back the positives that sometimes we can tend to forget. And we've been sharing that we've been applying a lot of these same lessons to our relationship with our teenage son. And he's out of the house this evening, so I can speak a little more freely, because I know he's not just right around the corner. But I mean, one of the things I've been doing over the last number of months have actually been going back to some of our old albums of look how cute he was when he was 2, and when he was 3, and when he was 4, and remembering some of the positive things. Because it refreshes those elements of our relationship.
And helps us look at the right list.
Yeah, that's right. Helps us look at the right list. So moving into our day 3, what's in store? We're going to talk about conflict and the physiology that goes along with conflict, which can be really eye-opening if you're not familiar with some of this. We're also going to be talking about communication, because we want to stop the hurt. And a lot of our communication patterns can be what's contributing to the hurt. It can be what is opening up the spigot at the bottom of our love and respect tank. And so we want to, talk about some of that. And that brings us to spending some more time looking at the love and respect tank and what's called the crazy cycle when things are going out of control, as well as we have an exercise to kind of end the evening with on just appreciation. But this verse out of Romans sets the stage for us pretty well today. Be devoted to one another in love and honor one another above yourselves. You know, we're going to be talking about love and respect, and they're both here. And, you know, Paul, writing to the church in Rome, was telling the believers there, he said, you know, do both here. All right. You need to be devoted to one another in love, and you should honor one another above yourself. So they're both in play. But when it comes to sort of our natural languages, respect tends to hit home more with men and love with women, and we'll be talking about that.
If you can hang on to one verse for your marriage, I think this one is so foundational, because if you can really be devoted to one another in love and really honoring the other person above yourself, a lot of that other stuff is going to fall into place. So you may want to print this one out and post it on your bathroom mirror.
Yeah. And we understand that, you know, when you're at the loggerheads, when you're, you know, like the Rams had their horns locked together, this may feel tough, but it's what brings it back, brings the release to that. But we'll dig into it. So a few more verses to get us going here this evening. From Ephesians 4, don't let any rotting speech come out of your mouths, but only what's helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it might benefit those who listen. And, you know, the translation here, some people may remember the translation for don't let any unwholesome speech come out of your mouth, but the Greek word that's behind there is really like a piece of meat that is infested with bugs and is really rotting. And so, you know, when we've been in those relational verbal spars with somebody we love, then, you know, the harsh comments hurt even more. And it really is like just, you know, rotting speech that can come out. Instead, we want to do what builds each other up according to their needs. And then for Ephesians 25 here in chapter 5, husbands, love your wives, just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her to make her holy. So when he's writing to the husbands, he's saying, hey, you need to love her in such a way that you're following the example of Jesus, who gave up his life to make her what God wants her to be, right? So Jesus gave up his life to make us holy. It's what God wants for us, to have that relationship with him restored. In our relationship with our wives, it's us giving up what we need to give up in order to help her to become all that God wants her to become. And then similarly, he comes around to wives and he says, wives, respect your husband. Now, it's interesting. He doesn't say, wives, love your husband. But I mean, we already saw in Romans, love and honor are both important. But when he's coming and trying to help folks that maybe are in some relational tussles, husbands, love your wife. Wife, respect your husband. We'll be talking more on that. From John Gottman's research, remember, he's the one that has studied hundreds of marriages in his love lab, where they instrument people up and thousands through other longitudinal studies and things. And on these topics, he says, fondness and admiration are two of the most critical elements in a rewarding and long-lasting romance. So fondness is love, right? And admiration is respect. If you're admiring somebody, those perspectives of respect and deference and things are going to kind of come out naturally. And continuing on, your fondness and your admiration, if they're being chipped away, is the route to bringing them back always begin with first realizing how valuable they are. Fanning them is the crucial first step to salvaging such a marriage, right? And we talked about a little bit like the embers. So in our marriage relationship, we got to find whatever embers are there when we're feeling disconnected, and we got to start sort of fanning those flames to bring them back.
And I think we'll talk more about this in a minute, but it starts whether you feel like it or not, because if you wait to feel like it, that's probably not going to happen. But if you start showing respect, even when you don't feel like it, and start showing love, even when you don't feel like it, then it begins to start a better cycle, and then you'll feel like it more.
Right. So at this point, I'm going to invite you to go ahead and take off your mute button there, because I want to ask this question, and people can kind of chime in. the
Or
vast,
you can chat.
or you can
Type in
chat
if you don't like
if you want
talking.
to chat. Anne's able to monitor the chat while we're doing this. The vast majority of marital conflicts revolve around what? What? Oh, I heard something.
Money.
Money. Yeah, you're right. Money is right up there. I think at the top of the list on a lot of the surveys, a lot of the things. What are some other ones that people know of or think about?
Family.
Family. Yes, right. Family. It is amazing that for, in a lot of situations, holidays can be a stressful time because while you're being around family, sometimes extended family, sometimes it's just, the togetherness when things are in a bad spot. What else comes to mind for folks? Anything else? Okay. Well, one of the things that I ran across some time ago, which was eye-opening for me, and when I thought about it, and even like run-of-the-mill sort of conflicts, is that the vast majority of them involve preferences, and it made me think about it differently.
Right. So even money, a lot of times what you're upset about is your preference for how to spend it, right?
Or how to save it.
Or how to save it. Exactly.
Right.
And so, family preferences, how
Right.
much time do we spend with them? How much time do we not?
Right.
So a lot of the things that you mentioned or even thought of and didn't mention out loud, they can still often be tied back to preferences.
Right. And what's interesting is that, so at the end of the day, there's not probably going to be a right and wrong. Now there may be, one path may be better for everybody involved than another path, but it's not like we're saying, well, I want to go rob a bank to kind of put money in the kids' college fund. And then the wife can say, no, that's wrong, right? See, that would be wrong. But a lot of our conflicts are really about preferences. And that really, for me, was a good mental shift to make me start thinking about these differently.
Yeah.
But the issue is that our preferences are often really deeply rooted, and they're really ingrained in us. And sometimes we don't even know why. So, we've had our iceberg over here. And so, we have some elements of culture that is, well, how I was raised, how she was raised. And then we have mindset issues. There may be wholeness issues that all of a sudden, that something triggers something within me that, based on a direction that Anne wants to go in some decision that we're going with, and we're starting to lock horns on it. And then at the very base, it's the spirituality side of, well, what is God doing here in the mix of all of us? But one of the reasons that these really, the conflicts that seem to be lasting conflicts, even if you say, well, they're preferences, is because a lot of them are deeply rooted.
So one story that I wanted to share was when we were first married, and I would cook dinner. He would come home from work because I got off earlier than he did, eat dinner, and then, okay, time to do the dishes. And my mother never did the dishes. So at first I kind of wanted him to do the dishes, right?
Yeah. And when I grew up, my dad never did the dishes.
No. So, okay, that was the first conflict. So, all right, we'll do them together. But I wanted to do them right after dinner because my family, we always did it right after dinner. And he says, no, I want to go relax for a while.
Right. I've just had a nice meal.
Yeah.
It's like I want to go sort of enjoy and bask in, the afterglow of the nice meal.
Yeah. No, they have to be done now. No, I want to rest first. I'll be happy to do them, but I'm going to do them later. And for me, getting that stuff all hard and dried and caked on there, it was like, no, now it's 3 times harder to wash them. If you just wash them right away, it's not nearly so hard. And so that was one that we went round and round about for months, I think, before we finally gave in, I think.
But at the end of the day, I mean, it was all really a preference. Yeah.
Yeah. Because either way, it wasn't wrong to leave the dishes in there, but I couldn't go relax. I can't relax when there's dishes in there and stuff, starting to dry hard on.
Right.
And I can now.
Right.
There are times now where, we got to go, and we leave and we come back to dirty dishes.
Yeah.
So, but I couldn't handle that at all when we were first married.
Yeah. And I mean, and some of that, we could go back to elements of fullness.
Right.
I mean, there's other areas of our lives where we realized we had to help build up healing and wholeness for the other person so that it freed us to have the relationship we needed to have. It took some of the triggers off the table.
Right. And sometimes it's just knowing what your spouse is kind of OCD on. I mean, I think a lot of people have their pet peeves, their thing, which way the toilet paper comes off the roll, I told him when we got married, it comes off the top. I don't care how you put it on, I will turn it around. Okay. So, but you got to know what are your spouse's things. And most of the time you can accommodate those if you just realize this is something that is a deeply ingrained preference.
Right. So, but even in the midst of conflict, what's interesting is that we know that we should treat each other in a better way than we are. And I don't know if this has ever happened in your experience, but maybe there is a heated argument going on, either with your spouse or in the midst of the family. The phone rings, and all of a sudden everybody gets quiet. The person picks it up. Well, hello, the tea garden residents. How can I help you? And and you kind of deal with the phone call, and you hang up the call, and then everybody's like, rah, back into the fray. And it kind of shows you that we know how we should be treating each other, and that in some cases we can kind of just stop and treat an outside observer, an outside person, with the proper respect that we would normally do. But yet we don't in our families, and because we get riled up. And that's part of the fact that our whole body gets involved in the midst of conflict. And I want to talk about this here for a minute. What happens during conflict when we're getting heated up? Well, one of the things that happens is that when we feel threatened, our brain reacts. All right. So we got a little picture of a brain here, and just two areas that we're going to talk about. So one is the amygdala. They're sort of in the middle, kind of like a pinto bean. They're kind of purple on our screen. But it is the fight and flight response area of the brain. And when it gets activated, what it does is it moves your brain into fight and flight response. Now, the prefrontal cortex, which you see up there, the PFC, sometimes it's referred to make it easier to say. So that the PFC is like the parent of our brain, all right? It is the one that kind of keeps everything in check. Hey, everybody settle down. No, don't do that. That's a bad idea. So the PFC is what regulates and keeps us from doing the actions that are really sort of our crazy ideas. When folks have been, say, they've had like a tumor or other brain injury that impacts their PFC, they may have been a very sort of, well-regulated person, but without the PFC doing its full function, all of a sudden their behaviors start to change. Well, so this is what, all the things that the medical sciences are seeing and how they're trying to help folks who are having these conditions. But when we move into a conflict, our brain now, the PFC shuts down. Your brain actually starts sending less blood flow to the PFC. And what happens now is that your coherent thought processes sort of stop, and your protect protocols take over. Your body releases cortisol and adrenaline, and your heartbeat starts moving a lot, it really elevates because it starts pumping these around your body to get your body into a position where you can fight, you can flee if you need to, or you can fight if you need to, while the PFC shuts down. And when you're actually in the middle of all this, you can actually sort of rate it. This is a little heart rate monitor. And I don't know if you've ever seen these or not, but you can put them on your finger and you can push it, and it will give you both the oxygen content, but also your heart rate. We've been using this for the last year or so in our family and working with our son. So that, because one of the things we want to realize is, well, when is he experiencing this? Because there's even a label for this, and it's called being flooded. And what is when your body is flooded with these with the chemicals, the biochemicals that are released, cortisol and adrenaline, that you literally are not going to be able to have the same rational discussion that you would. So when we're working with our son and we realize things are kind of going over the top, and we'll just say, hey, can you put this on? And he's curious. He's like, okay. Oh, wow. Yeah, my heart rate is 110. And anytime you're over 100, the psychologist basically say, your body is really flooded at this point. If you're in a stress, fight, flight situation and the cortisol has been released.
It's not the time to try and have a rational discussion.
Yeah, and that's the point. And then, but the bigger point in all this is that men are much more susceptible to this than women. It's one of the biological differences between us. And so, it's pretty interesting and we'll talk here just a little bit more about it. We'll come back to it. But now we want to talk about what I call the 3 C's of communication. These are sort of the 3 negative C's of communication. All right. The first one is a complaint. And, there are lots of times we want something to be done differently, right? She wants the dishes to be washed right afterwards. And, when we have the complaint, and here's a couple other examples, we don't go out as much as we used to, or, hey, don't leave your socks in the middle of the floor, right? Well, the next one is criticism. And that's where we take things from being specific and we move it to something that's more global. And maybe we're starting to point fingers of blame.
This is going downhill.
Yeah, this is going downhill.
Complaint can be kind of neutral.
Right.
Okay, now you're definitely going into more negative.
Yeah. And so, now all of a sudden it's, hey, you never take me anywhere anymore. And I've never met anyone as messy as you are. You can see how it's different. You're moving it from a specific situation to now I'm starting to point the finger at an individual. And then finally is contempt, intentional insult, name calling, mockery. And it's often fueled because of these negative thoughts that we've had about somebody. And, so like thinking about the socks in the middle of the floor, you are just a total slob, right? So now we're kind of characterizing the person, we're name calling them. And the ultimate one, which Ann and I were talking about, I said this is like the nuclear,
option.
The nuclear option when it comes to men. I think maybe to women as well, but maybe it's just because you're such a failure, right? I mean, that just cuts to the heart of what a lot of men value in trying to succeed. And I know women also would feel it. But so these 3 C's are the ways that
communication can degenerate.
Yeah, degenerate in the midst of conflict. So now, tying this back together, what's interesting is that women start to flood at the contempt level. A lot of women don't even flood at the contempt level. It's even when it goes further beyond contempt that women really start to get the elevated heart rate, cortisol gets released and all of that. But for men, it comes at the criticism level. And that's, so it's really, so what it all comes about is men start getting flooded before the women start getting flooded. So while the woman may still be thinking we're having a rational discussion, the guy's brain is shutting down. And neither party really realizes it.
You get a lot of mental debris coming out of your mouth once you're flooded. So
you can. Right. So, like I said, because for guys, you can say, well, I can go into this fight mode. And I don't mean physical fighting, but it can be, when you move into fight and flight mode, that's what you're thinking is, am I going to defend myself and, verbally or whatever? Or am I going to fly? And a lot of times we can't really fly, but we withdraw. And, this is a good picture, so you've got the wife trying to communicate and you've got the husband kind of doing the, I'm not even looking at you anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. We just got to stop, right? Because what's interesting is that, so once you're flooded, the most loving response that a person can reasonably have really is to withdraw. Because, right, what's the other option is to fight. It's to continue to argue or worse. But also what sometimes, isn't realized is that it takes about 20 minutes for your body to actually calm down. And for some of the, the biochemicals to sort of, restore some levels. And so even when you might think that you've kind of settled back down, John Gottman was like, no, wait 20 minutes because you don't really have the good picture on it. It takes a while for the chemicals.
The PFC isn't working again.
Yeah, it's not really coming back up.
And for women, we follow them. Don't walk away from me. I'm not done.
Right.
We have to work this out.
Right.
And that's not the time. It's give them the 20 minutes.
Right.
But then, yes, you do need to come back to it.
Yes.
So don't take this as a license to just, I'm flooded, so discussion's over. No, it's on pause until the levels come down. And then we need to, continue to work it out. But I think as a woman, we want to follow.
Right. Yes. And we're going to talk.
And I was doing that a lot with our son. No, you come back here. I'm not done with you yet.
And, he may be walking away because
so that he doesn't lose it.
Right. He doesn't lose it. So, all right.
This was a good learning experience.
This was, yes. So, so what do we do here in the midst of all this, or maybe before all of this, or after the 20 minutes for all of this? And so there's a good biblical example, and we're going to go back to a passage that we've already looked at. And so remember, this is Jesus talking to some of the believers there in the city of Ephesus through the Apostle John when he gave John this message to pass on. He says, I know what you've been doing, your hard work, your perseverance. You've persevered, you've endured hardship, but I must tell you this. And the pattern that we see here is that Jesus gave 3 genuine compliments to him, and then he said, but now I want to talk about an issue that we have, a complaint. And so, for Jesus, he would say, hey, I know what you've been doing, man. I know you have been working hard. I know you have been persevering in the midst of a hard situation, and you've endured hardship. He's like, I am commending you for what you have done, but there is something we need to talk about, right? But when we get those genuine compliments, it gives you security from the get-go that the spouse values us, values the relationship, but there's something we need to talk about. But all of a sudden, it's it helps take away a sense of being attacked.
Right, and you can also be the benefit of the doubt. I know you probably don't realize how this is affecting me, or I realize you're not trying to do this on purpose. I realize you don't see it the same way I do. So another way to start before the complaint is to give that benefit of the doubt to the other person.
Yeah, but a lot of that times that's coming from the mindset and some of those things too. Mm-hmm. But you can make it even better if you say, well, let me ask permission. So that really what I'm not doing so much as giving a complaint is I'm making a request. And then you can even give the person, your spouse, or, like sometimes for us, it's our son. It's like, hey, I have a request to make. So can we talk about it sometime tonight? All right. It gives everybody a chance to cool down. It lets the 20 minutes go. It gives the other person a bit of a sense of control. And they can say, okay, sure, I'm going to go, take my shower, or I'm going to go do this. And why don't we, we'll come together at 9 o'clock and let's talk. So putting some of these pieces together, when you sit down to talk about it, then what you want to do is you want to focus on the facts, right? You want to present it with context as to why it matters or how you feel. You want it delivered at an appropriate time when everybody is ready. Nobody is flooded for sure. And then you want to really deliver it and open it up in a gentle way so that you're really giving more of a request. If we go back to the one with like the socks.
Right. That's what I was going to say. So, we talked about just a complaint. Can you please pick up your socks? Or you're such a slob, or you're so messy. Okay. You're not going to get anywhere by telling your spouse, you're messy, get your stinking dirty socks off the floor. Okay?
Right, yeah, and the husband, when he's in a bad spot, it's like, this is my kingdom. If I want to throw my socks down, I will throw my socks down. So you can see how you can just spin that out really easily. Right. But if I say, honey, I want to talk to you about something. I noticed you keep leaving your socks on the floor, and I know that probably doesn't seem like a big deal to you, and it really isn't a big deal, but for me, the bedroom is like my sanctuary. It's the one room of the house where I want to go and have it be neat and tidy. The rest of the house is a mess, dirty dishes, all of that. And so it would mean a lot to me if you could just, when you take off your socks, get them straight into the hamper. And then I don't have to walk in, because when I walk in and see dirty socks, it's just like, another thing I have to pick up, or another, and so for me, it would just be a real gift to me if you could pick them up. Right.
Okay. So, and by explaining it that way.
Right. So what that does is it sets it up for me where it's really, by me putting my socks in a hamper, it's like, this is a way I show love to my wife. And this is a way that I realize, this is like, I'm giving her a gift of the sanctuary that she can come in here, she can, decompress, she can do whatever. So all of a sudden it changes my perspective, because now I know the why. I know why it matters. And it's not just that, socks in the middle of the floor is a pain and all that, but it's all about giving her a sense of comfort.
And it also creates a bigger picture so that he can think before he throws something else on the floor.
Right.
Now it's not like, oh, so he stopped throwing his socks and now it's your shirt, by seeing the bigger picture, then he can think through the other things before they come up.
Yes. So, but, having the thing of, waiting till everybody's calmed down, having the appropriate time, presenting it as a request instead of, of a demand. all of a sudden you're opening the door to set a stage that now all of a sudden I get this a deeper glimpse into my wife about what is special for her.
Yeah, and don't, if you walk in there and you go, oh, the socks are on the floor again, that's not the time to walk out and have this conversation, because it'll come out kind of like, look, I know you don't like it, but okay, so you also have to think through what you're going to say before you say it. Make sure you're calm and present it as, this is a request.
Yeah.
So I know that can be hard, but that's why we're saying don't do it while you're frustrated.
Right. Yeah. So we're going to kind of continue on here on the aspect of our love tank with love and respect and needs. So I think most of us say, yeah, a woman needs love. And, it's pretty clear that a man needs respect. They did a study some number of years ago when they asked 400 men, right, you have two choices. You can either be left alone and unloved, or you can feel you're inadequate and you're going to be disrespected. Which would you pick? You're going to go to one of these two islands. You're going to be either unloved or you're going to be disrespected. And 74% of the guys said, send me to the island of unloved, because I would much rather be unloved than disrespected. And to women, they may be kind of scratching your head and say,
eye-opening.
Yeah, say, what? I can't believe that. Why on earth would you not want to be loved? Because for guys, somehow the aspect of love that God has created us to have revolves around respect in a lot of ways. Now, we said people are on a bell curve. For some people, some guys, it might be more on the love side than the respect side, right? There was 26% that said, I would rather be loved than to be disrespected, than be respected. But for most guys, it's like respect is a need. And we go back to Romans, or to Ephesians, and that's why he says, hey, love your wife, respect your husband.
Right. And it's all about honor for both.
Yeah, like
if I'm honoring him and he's honoring me, okay, that's going to cover a lot of things. And I'm loving him and he's loving me.
Right. But when a woman is feeling unloved, what's interesting is her reaction is to push the issue, because she wants resolution and she wants to try to restore the relationship.
Right.
But by pushing the issue, like that picture we saw of the woman still talking to her husband while he has his hand up, right? She's pushing the issue because she wants to restore the relationship so that she's not feeling unloved. But when he's feeling disrespected,
but if that makes her husband feel disrespected,
and when he's feeling disrespected, his reaction is to withdraw, and particularly when he's flooded. And what's interesting is that when he begins to withdraw, the wife feels that as unloving. So she perceives it as unloving. And what you get is this cycle that is called the crazy cycle.
Yeah, and this was put forth by Emerson Eggerichs, just to give him the credit for this. And he came up with this crazy cycle so that the woman feels unloved, so she criticizes, which makes him feel disrespected, which makes him withdraw, which makes her feel unloved.
So she goes after it more, because she's chasing him down the hall. And you end up in this crazy cycle. And then and so for the woman, we can step back and say, does every woman deserve unconditional love, right? And I think people would pretty quickly say, yeah, everybody deserves unconditional love. For God so loved the world. We love God's unconditional love. Well, how about this? Does every man deserve unconditional respect? And now all of a sudden, folks scratch their heads a little more, right? I mean, we think about, no matter what your political persuasion, we've tried to raise our kids, you respect and honor the office of the president, whether we agree with whoever's in office at any given time or not, and whether, we wish they might make different decisions. But we still want to give proper respect and honor. And even as we saw, back in the verse in Romans, honor one another. But when it comes down to it, a lot of times we have this perception that, respect has to be earned. And what we want to stretch you on is to realize that respect needs to be given, even if you're struggling with respecting them, from the heart. So you can honor, even though you're struggling in aspects of respecting.
This is really hard and difficult. I know that. And if you're in an abusive situation, that can be something separate that we're not that's not what we're talking about.
Right.
You know, I'm going to honor him even if he's punching me in the face. That's not
Yeah.
where we're going with this.
Right.
Okay, so hear that. That's a different thing. But if you're just fighting with each other, the normal verbal tussles, and you know it's getting bad, and then you don't want to respect him because he's arguing with you all the time.
Unloving.
And
She feels like I am very unloving.
Right. So how can I respect him when I'm feeling so unloved? But to begin to try to find the list, the right list
Right.
of the things that you can respect about this person. I respect that they work hard, that they save money, or that they
Right.
spend wisely, or, you know, there are things, and to be able to start to verbalize those. And, you know, when someone feels respected, they begin to act differently. And sometimes even those people who are just really down on themselves, you start respecting them, they will suddenly act differently. And so you can break the cycle.
Yeah, and we'll go there. But so the question is, well, when you're in the middle of the conflict,
right,
who should go first? Right? So you're in the middle of the crazy cycle. So who should be the one that responds unconditionally?
Right. The one that's going to say, okay, I'm going to be loving even though I'm feeling disrespected, or I'm going to be respectful even though I'm feeling unloved. Okay. And so Emerson Eggerichs said that this was the question that he got all the time. Well, which one of us should be the one that has to stop the cycle? And so he said he went to the Lord and he said, Lord, I get this question all the time and I don't know what to tell people. And so God's answer that he gave him to tell people was, tell them the most mature one should go first.
Right. So now you can picture this, right? All right, we're in the middle of a conflict. Well, all right, I'll be the mature one, and I am going to stop this crazy cycle, you know, even though I'm feeling very disrespected right now. Right?
So there you go. You can interpret that however you want to interpret that.
But right, somebody needs to go first.
Yeah.
And in reality, whoever is going first really is the more mature one.
Right.
They're the ones, you know, so like, you know, if we're working with, you know, our son on things, it's kind of like, okay, we are the mature ones here. So we have to be the one that breaks out of the crazy cycle when we're in a situation where you know, cortisol flying and everything else, and people are getting flooded. It's like, okay, stop. We just got to stop. So, all right. So now, how do we, you know, what do we do to make it better?
Right. So I think I kind of talked about this a little bit. I got ahead of myself, but communicating respect, and he'll become more loving. And, you know, one of the ways you can communicate respect is just by asking forgiveness.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think our pattern for handling conflict is we separate, let us get unflooded, pray, ask God, okay, first of all, I tell God why he's wrong and I'm mad. Okay. And then I say, okay, God, show me, you know, what is my part in this? And then we're able to come back and I'm going to say, I apologize for my part in this. Okay. And that's a way of showing respect. So that's one way to do it. But you can also just, okay, hold on, time out. We're in the crazy cycle. I'm sorry. Let's try this again. I appreciate what you're trying to say, or I appreciate, you know, something that is a verbal respect.
Right.
And then hopefully, not always.
Yeah.
Okay, you can't always be guaranteed
Yeah.
that this is gonna be reciprocated, but hopefully then that will cause the husband eventually to become more loving.
Yeah. So it's like on the slides, you know, some examples there of things that, you know, hey, they start to build back in respect, you know, so you try to say, what are the things I can respect about my husband? Thank you for working so hard, you know, not that the women don't work hard too, but the point is, it's, you know, what is giving some respect to him? Kids, listen to your dad. He's giving you great wisdom, you know.
Right. Words of respect outside of the crazy cycle also will help you not get into the crazy cycle so often. Yeah.
So, I mean, what we're showing here is, you know, you got a half full tank and we're trying to open the spigot at the top, right? We're trying to say, all right, maybe we've shut off the spigot at the bottom. We're kind of broke out of the crazy cycle, but we need to replenish the tank.
Right.
And, you know, on the other side, for men, you know, communicate love to our wives. You know, do it in a respectful way. They need respect too, but love is generally their main language. It can be touch, on holding their hand, giving them a hug. It can be, you know, sharing verbally, because women like to talk about things generally more than men do.
They like the openness. We like to hear your heart, what you're thinking and feeling.
Right. And so it's more of, you know, how was your day? It was fine. You know, no, let's go beyond fine. Well, you know, it's actually, you know, kind of crazy, and here's something that happened. And, you know, also, you know, giving appreciation where appreciation's due. whoever, and is the main cook in our household. So, for me, and I love the food that she makes. So, I'm blessed by that. So, and when you're doing this, they call this the energizing cycle. All right. So it's the spigot at the top. It's what we're trying to fill the love tank with.
Yeah. So instead of being crazy with each other, you're going to start building each other up. He's building love into me. I'm building respect into him.
Yeah.
And hopefully respect and love each way. But our son just got home, makes our dog bark. So.
Hey, Joe. So, all right. Well, we are.
Oh, and this last thing at the bottom.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So the key to motivating another person is meeting their deepest need. Somehow we think that the key to motivating is criticizing, right? And it doesn't work. And we all do it. We all fall into that pattern at times. But the key to motivating someone is meeting their needs.
Yeah.
Okay. Spending time with them, like the 5 love languages, if you're familiar with that, those are some of their deepest needs. But all the research shows love for a woman is the deepest need, and respect for a man is his deepest need in general.
In general, right? So now we have an exercise, pretty straightforward. You probably will need, I encourage you to grab a pen, paper, pencil, or a cell phone that you can just jot a couple words on in your little notes app.
Are they going to say it verbally?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
But first of all, you got to pick it out.
Okay.
So, all right, so here it is, what we have, and we have 2 slides for this. And on each slide, we want you to pick 2 of the words off the slide that sort of hit you as something that you appreciate about your spouse. And so we're going to give you a minute or so. Pick those. When you both pick them, then go ahead and communicate them to one another. Well, actually, hold off until we do that. We're going to do the first slide, picking 2. We're going to pick 2 more on the next slide, and then we'll do the communication.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So go ahead and pick 2 and jot them down.
Whoops.
Yeah.
Sorry.
All right, I'm going to advance to the next list. Now pick 2 more, and then when you've each picked them, then go ahead and communicate all 4 to one another. All right, so we'll see here. I think folks look like they're done. All righty. So it's good to hear, it's good to verbalize what it is, some of the things that we appreciate about our spouse, characteristics of who they are, right? It's the flip side of calling somebody a slob. Yeah, you're wise, or you're loving, or you're, dependable, whatever it might be that, to you helps really capture, part of the attributes of your spouse.
And these are things that we forget to communicate.
Right.
Okay. So yes, I always think my husband is thoughtful and dependable and wise, but how often do I tell him, right? How often do we like to communicate the things that we don't like, that are bothering us, but we forget to communicate the things that we do like. So that's why this exercise is important, because it should have made you feel good that your spouse told you some things they appreciate about you. For bonus points, you can make some sticky notes and say, I appreciate this, I appreciate that. And it can be characteristics. It can also be appreciating things that they do. You could write a note. We did that on the last challenge. We asked people to write a note. I'm not sure anybody did, but so we didn't necessarily assign that, but that's a good, bonus point sort of thing to do, is to write a note. Here's what I appreciate about you.
Yeah. All right. So, well, we are actually sort of wrapping up as we move into the homework. So we're a little bit maybe ahead of schedule, but that's good. So for homework for this week, we want to encourage you, continue the prayer time, right? It's knitting you together with Jesus in the mix. So, you might take a minute, and I'll go ahead, take a minute right now and just kind of check in and see if you think there's any adjustments that you all need to make in the time that you're doing it. This is a Monday through Friday, so your schedules might be pretty routine, but just take 1 minute, since we got a little bit extra time, check in with one another, see if your schedule for tomorrow and the rest of the week still works. Go. All right. So the next sort of main homework assignment for today, and that is to try to put into practice the element of discussing a complaint / request that we talked about. So Anne will be emailing you out sort of the details on this, just like she did yesterday. So you don't necessarily need to, copy all this down. But we do want to emphasize is, don't pick whatever your biggest complaint is. If you've been, trying to wrestle through something for months, this is probably not the one to start on.
Don't start with money.
Yeah, maybe not start with money, but start with something that is something you do need to talk about, that would be helpful to talk about, so you can try to resolve it and move forward with it. Set up a time to do it. Try to come up with your list of 3 genuine comments or compliments that you can share, what you really do appreciate, and then present your request based on the facts, but also share why it's important to you, because that helps your spouse understand. It helps them see the bigger picture, and it's okay to say, this is just one of those areas that I'm OCD on, and that's a valid way of loving one another. Because we all have our quirks, we all have things that just, it's a preference, and we don't even know why it's such a strong preference, but it is. And if our spouse can say, oh, all right, yeah, I can make that happen, and I realize now that is like an act of love to do that. So,
and just since we have time, sometimes when you're thinking through this and you're thinking through the why, you may realize, I don't really have a good why. And so maybe it is just I'm OCD, and just like you just got to understand. But or it might be where you, like Grant said, with the cabinet doors.
The cabinet doors.
Okay, so it's not a big deal. When we first got married, he went through soap like in a week, and I used to take like 3 months to go through a bar of soap, and so it was irritating me. But when I started thinking about why, I don't know, I have to buy more soap, and I just realized, okay, for the rest of my life, I have to buy more soap. I just buy more soap. It's not, he smells clean. That's a good thing, right? I mean, so sometimes if you start thinking through the why and you don't really have a good why, And you might realize that I really can just let this go. And you've got to learn, we all have to learn to let things go that are the little thing. You can't just have everything exactly the way you want it. So pick the things that you really do bother you, and for a reason.
Yeah.
So just a little disclaimer there.
Yeah. And so if we do, and we are wrapping up, so you get a few extra minutes there. So this is maybe something that you can say, hey, maybe let's come together in 30 minutes or an hour after we get the kids to bed. If you're both ready, and if you're not ready to do this tonight, don't do it tonight. Don't rush this, because obviously this can be something that you want to have success on. So take the time that you need to, but I think with the instructions that you're in pretty good track to do it. So wrapping up, men need unconditional respect as much as women need unconditional love. We all need both. The Bible tells us to give it to each other, both love and honor, right? But there is that sense that men thrive on respect as much as women thrive on caring and such. Men flood before women. It's just a physiological thing. Somehow, for whatever reason, that's how God designed us. I guess so, well, anyways.
This is one of those vocabulary words that we were talking about. So men, you can say to your wife, I'm flooded. Okay. And now you have a common word to understand what's going on. And wives, we can say, oh, okay.
Right. Yeah. So it's like, right. So, and that his loving withdrawal in the moment, yes, it may feel unloving to the lady in the house. And her loving pursuit of resolution in the moment may feel like disrespect. All right. And so the most mature one needs to be the one that kind of breaks the cycle and say, okay, hey, we'll come back together in a half hour, and then we can kind of go through it. Mm-hmm. So, all right, coming attractions. Tomorrow, it takes time. We're going to be talking more on wholeness and elements of spirituality. And then day 5, Friday, closeness and chemistry. And just a reminder, planning a date for this coming weekend where you all can kind of celebrate, hopefully, some reconnection.
Tomorrow, the wholeness and spirituality, we're going to be talking about stress in your life and how that affects your marriage. And that's a big one that we don't always realize. So I think that'll be really helpful.
Yeah. And finally, our prayer as we kind of close out our time.
So I just want you to listen to this. I'm going to read it twice. The first time, this is from Song of Songs, chapter 2, verse 13, and it's from the Passion Translation, which is a paraphrase translation. The first time, listen to it as God speaking to you. And then the second time, think about it as your spouse speaking it to you. Okay, so this time, listen to it from the Lord. Can you not discern this new day of destiny breaking forth around you? The early signs of my purposes and plans are bursting forth. The budding vines of new life are now blooming everywhere. The fragrance of their flowers whispers, there is change in the air. Arise, my love, my beautiful companion, and run with me to the higher place. For now is the time to arise and come away with me. God wants to do a new thing in your life, in your lives as a married couple, in your lives individually. And he's saying, come with me to the higher place, right? Come up and practice my kingdom ways, okay? And then think about that if your spouse was saying this to you or you were saying this to your spouse, okay? Can you not discern this new day of destiny breaking forth around you, around us? The early signs of my purposes and plans are bursting forth. The budding vines of new life are now blooming everywhere. The fragrance of their flowers whispers, there is change in the air. Arise, my love, my beautiful companion, and run with me to the higher place. For now is the time to arise and come away with me. And that's our prayer for you, that there will be change in the air, that you will see some negative patterns and begin to go to the higher place of the more positive patterns and the higher place of doing this with God and allowing God to shine the light into your lives and into your hearts and show where you can change and show how you can respect and honor and love the other person more fully. So have hope. That's what we're getting at here, that there's change and it's coming, okay? And you can do it together.
Yeah. So,
Let's just say quick
no,
prayer.
that was the best
Okay.
prayer we think we could have for tonight. So blessings upon the rest of your evening, wherever you are, whatever time zone. We're going to hang out here till everyone else is gone. So if you have a question that you want to ask, you can feel free to hang out with us here till the end. Comments, whatever. But anyways, everybody feel free to go and have thanks for coming, and we'll see you tomorrow night.
Bye.
Just wanted to apologize. Can you hear it?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, just wanted to apologize